Have you ever been in a conversation where you're laying out something that feels obvious? I mean, obvious. And the person across from you leans back and shrugs and says, both sides do it. And just like that, the air just goes out of the room. You're talking about documented lies. You're talking about shady backroom dealings. You're talking about behavior that, 10, 15 years ago would have ended political careers. And the response is both sides. Not outrage, not curiosity, not even really disagreement, just a shrug. Well, I want to talk about that shrug because I don't think it's harmless. I don't think it's neutral in any real sense of the word. And I definitely don't think it's always honest. I want to talk about the myth of both sides. All right, happy Friday, everyone, and welcome to another supplemental installment of Back Porch Files from your neighbor on the left, a podcast where we talk about liberal politics, human decency, and life on the blue side of America's ideological divide. My name is Don Spielis, your opinionated host, and today I want to talk about the both sides argument. So let me start off with something on the personal side. Many of you know my situation. I live around a lot of conservative folks, MAGA folks. I hear the arguments. I have the conversations. And when I start talking about the Trump administration, the lies and the documented false statements, the questionable ethical behavior, the norm breaking, the investigations, the court findings, on and on, I almost always hear some version of both sides lie, both sides are corrupt, both sides are the same. Now listen, I'm not naive. Politics is not Sunday school. Politicians spin, they posture, they exaggerate. That's been true since powdered wigs. But here's the thing that bothers me. Both sides is often used not as analysis, but as an exit ramp. It's a way to disengage. It's a way to avoid discomfort. It's a way to avoid having to say, yeah, that actually sounds like it's not okay. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes, it's a way to avoid being outraged when outrage is actually appropriate. There is something psychologically soothing about saying both sides are the same. It feels balanced. It feels mature. It feels like you're above the fray somehow. You're not partisan. You're not emotional. You're not taking sides. You're just reasonable. But here's the uncomfortable question. What if the facts aren't balanced? What if the behavior isn't really symmetrical? What if one side is exaggerating, say, tax policy, and the other side is lying about election results? What if one side is talking about clean energy, and the other side is talking about suspending due process? Are those things equivalent? Because when we flatten everything into they're all bad, we remove the ability to measure degrees. And democracy depends on degrees. There's a difference between political disagreement and demonstrable falsehood. There's a difference between policy debate and reality denial. And when we pretend those are the same thing, we are distorting the picture heavily. Let me give you an example. Let's say there are two people on the news. One says, it's raining right now. And the other says, no, it's not. It's sunny. It's bright. It's the sunniest day we've ever had. Now imagine the journalist who's moderating these two saying something like, well, both perspectives are valid. Some say it's raining. Others say it's sunny. The truth is probably somewhere in the middle. No. The job of a journalist is to look out the freaking window. If it's raining, you say it's raining. If the other person is insisting it's sunny while standing in the middle of a thunderstorm, your job isn't to platform that equally. Your job is to say that's false. Objectivity does not mean neutrality between truth and falsehood. Objectivity means verifying reality. And somewhere along the way, we started confusing being fair with giving equal weight to unequal claims. Those are not the same thing. Now, here's where this gets uncomfortable, because I don't just hear both sides from media framing. I hear it from people I know. And often it shows up when I'm talking about very specific, documented behavior from the Trump administration. False claims, court findings, recorded statements, actions that break long-standing norms. Instead of addressing the specifics, the conversation shifts to, yeah, but Democrats lie too. Okay, which lie are we talking about? Are we comparing spin to outright fabrication? Are we comparing policy differences to attacks on democratic institutions? Or is what we're actually doing trying to make it emotionally easier not to engage? Because let's be honest, if everything is equally corrupt, then nothing requires your energy. If everyone's dirty, why bother caring? If they're all the same, why stay informed? If both sides do it, then outrage becomes pointless. And that right there is the danger. Being cynical feels wise, but it's politically useful to the people in power. If voters believe they're all corrupt anyway, they all lie, it doesn't matter, then accountability weakens. Engagement drops, standards erode, and the bar lowers. When someone does something outrageous and the response is, they all do it, what you've actually done is normalize it. You've taken behavior that would have been shocking and made it routine. You've flattened moral distinctions. And once everything is equally bad, nothing is especially alarming. That's not neutrality. That's surrender. Now, let me be clear about something. There are absolutely legitimate disagreements in politics. Tax rates, regulation levels, how big government should be. Those are ideological debates. Reasonable people can disagree. But there's a line between debate and denial, between interpretation and fabrication, between perspective and a provable falsehood. When courts rule something false, when transcripts exist, when video exists, when data exists, that's not partisan opinion. That's evidence. Not liking the information doesn't make it false. And treating evidence and denial as equal sides is not fairness. It's abdication. Here's the part that might sting. Some people use both sides because anger is uncomfortable. Because if you admit that something crosses a line, then you have to sit with that. You have to decide whether or not it matters to you. You have to decide whether or not you're okay with it. And if you're politically aligned with the person doing it, that's even harder. So both sides becomes emotional anesthesia. It numbs the reaction. It keeps you from having to confront the possibility that your team messed up in some way. Some people want an out because engagement is difficult. It requires using time. It requires the expenditure of energy, at least emotional energy. Sometimes it also requires admitting that we have been mistaken about something. But here's the truth. There are moments in history that merit anger. Not rage just for rage's sake, but moral clarity. And when we reflexively flatten everything to, they're all bad, we blunt that clarity. This is not meant to be a claim that all Democrats are perfect. They are not. They make mistakes. They spin. They play politics. As much as I've followed Democratic politics for most of my adult life, I can tell you 100% they are flawed. But imperfection is not the same as equivalence. A parking ticket and armed robbery are both crimes. That doesn't make them the same. If we lose the ability to measure scale, intent, and impact, we lose the ability to judge proportionally. And proportional judgment is the backbone of a functioning democracy. When something crosses from politics as usual into this undermines norms, we have to be able to say that. Even if it makes us uncomfortable, even if it causes tension at Thanksgiving dinner, even if someone rolls their eyes and says, "Oh, here we go again." Look, I get why both sides is appealing. It's tidy, it's socially safe, it avoids conflict, but sometimes it's very often not actual analysis. It's just avoidance. If one person says it's raining and the other insists it's sunny, the job is not to split the difference. It's to look out the window. And if we, as citizens, refuse to look out the window, if we refuse to distinguish between disagreement and deception, then we can't defend the standards that keep this whole thing from sliding off the rails. Both sides can be thoughtful, but it can also be a cop-out. And in moments that matter, we don't need cop-outs. We need clarity. We need engagement. We need accountability. Because, for me at least, I still believe that facts matter. All right, thank you for taking the time to download and listen to this extra episode of Back Porch Files. It thrills me that you took the time to listen to what I have to say, and I wish you'd reach out to the podcast and let me know what you're thinking. If you go to the podcast website, www.neighborontheleft.com, among other things, you'll find a page of ways that you can get in touch, whether it be through social media platforms that the podcast uses or through email. You will also find the blog that has posts that mirror the episodes, if you'd rather read than re-listen. And there is a page where you can actually use a web player to download or listen to every episode of the podcast so far. We'll be back on Tuesday with another full episode of Your Neighbor on the Left. So between now and then, stay engaged, stay kind, and have the kind of week you'd wish for others.